Hey, this is Damon Lindelof. I am calling from beautiful Los Angeles, California, Burbank actually, a game show capital of the world, where we write and produce the television program Lost, which is actually shot about 2,400 nautical miles from here on the island of Hawaii, but contrary to popular belief, the writers and producers are all sort of based here out of LA, and we go back and forth, so howdy. Right now, something that I'm really grooving on is this television show called Life on Mars, which is a BBC show. And the wonderful thing about the BBC, for those of you who don't know, that is the sort of big network in the UK, is that they make very limited numbers of episodes on their shows. So a show like The Prisoner, which is one of my favorite shows ever, there are only like 16 or 17 episodes, and this enables the creative forces behind those shows to end them, you know, so that they sort of live on in time as a complete product, as opposed to the way we do it here in the States, which is we just go on and on and on and on until people stop watching, and then we get canceled and everybody says we ended poorly, which is one of the things that we get ridden on all the time for Lost, and I don't blame the fans. But this show, Life on Mars, is spectacular because it's about this guy who is a homicide detective in modern-day London, and basically he is trying to hunt down this serial killer who is strangling women around town. And at this point in the show, you're sort of thinking, I've seen this about a billion times before. And then the guy's partner, who he's also sleeping with, she gets grabbed by the serial killer and abducted. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen this about a billion times before. But he's very upset about this, and he puts on his radio, car radio, and he pulls over to the side of the road because he can't even drive. He's so upset. And David Bowie's Life on Mars comes on, and it's playing, and he gets out of his car, and he's sort of collecting himself because he's hyperventilating, and then out of nowhere he gets hit by this massive semi-truck, and he flies up in the air, and he lands down on the ground, and when he opens up his eyes, he's wearing bell-bottoms and a leather jacket, and the entire building development that was around him is being constructed, and he's been knocked back to the year 1972. And that's the series. So now this guy is a homicide detective who knows everything that's going to happen for the next 35 years, and he relies on forensics in terms of his detective capabilities. And now he's got to be a homicide detective in 1972, where police are still able to routinely beat up suspects, and they don't have fibers and fingerprints and all that. And that's all sort of on the backdrop of he can go and see his mom and dad and himself when he was a little kid. And he's not entirely sure whether or not this is really happening or whether he's in a coma, which is, you know, exactly the kind of show I dig on. So, you know, that's sort of topping my list right now, and they're running it in the States on BBC America, and it's quite fantastic. Music-wise, the two discs that are getting a lot of play on my iPod right now are the new Gnarls Barkley, which is not the new Gnarls Barkley, the only Gnarls Barkley, and I've been a fan of DJ Danger Mouse since he did the Grey album, and this album is just one of those things where it's, you listen to it the first time and there's 2 or 3 songs on it that you kind of totally dig, and obviously the single Crazy is getting all sorts of play right now, but then you listen to it more and more, and it's one of those albums that is really an album. Each song sort of flows into the next, and taken as a whole, if you really listen to it in sort of a 52-minute block, I think these guys are doing stuff musically that is wildly inventive, and again, it makes me move my head every time I listen to it. The new Jurassic 5 album is also getting a lot of play on my iPod. They're an LA-based hip-hop group that is in the vein of the Far Side, but they've transcended their sound with every album, and I love the idea that there's 5 of them, there are 5 MCs, and it's a very eclectic mix of sounds, and I really, really like those guys a tremendous amount. And then, oddly enough, the other album that I'm listening to right now is Petula Clark, and this is the album that Downtown is on, and there's something oddly mellow and creepy about her at the same time. Last year I had a big Mama Cass phase, and we put that into the show, but this year it's Petula Clark, so I'm going to try to see if I can work her into Lost in some way. Reading-wise, I just finished reading this book called Freakonomics that everybody's been buzzing about for the last several years. It's basically applying mathematic economics to sort of real-world situations, and there's some very controversial theories advanced there, but it's like, I can't stand economics, but the idea that there are really actually real-world applications, sociological implications. I studied sociology in college so that I would have some degree of self-respect, other than just having a film degree, which everyone knows is just primarily about getting stoned all day and watching movies. At least I had that sociology degree, so I feel like I've done my sociology reading this year with The Tipping Point and Freakonomics and Blink. Those other books are also awesome. And the movies that I've seen recently that I really love, Little Miss Sunshine, which kind of everybody's buzzing about, and I can't say enough good things about that movie. It's just perfectly cast and beautifully written, and it's one of those things where it's like watching a terrible train wreck. It is horribly depressing and downtrodden, and the characters are pathetic on sort of every level, but then you walk out of the theater at the end and you realize that you've been smiling for the last 20 minutes. It's fairly fantastic. I highly recommend it. And then the other movie, a much different movie, is this movie Half Nelson, which is just about to come out. It's about this New York City school teacher played by Ryan Gosling, who is tremendous. It's just silly how good an actor he is. It's sort of the movie you've seen a billion times before, Lean on Me or Stand and Deliver, except the teacher is addicted to crack. And it's just incredibly evocative and cool and real and gritty, and I think a lot of people are going to be talking about it just for the guy's performance. But it's also a really simply directed and beautifully written movie, and I'm always, as a writer, looking at writing and feel that that's a perfect movie in many ways, just in terms of the way it's written. So that's what I'm up to. That's what's floating my boat. That is my list. I love it or hate it. It is what makes me happy right now in the year 2006, late summer.